You know what I did today, Dwayne? Not one thing, and it cost me about $4. That was Chuck Rademacher hollering down a phone line that hissed like a bad ground wire from 9,000 miles away at an hour of the morning that made no sense on either end of it. I was standing in my kitchen in Mesa, Arizona, in my robe, holding a cup of coffee I'd already let go cold. 67 years old at the time. I'm 70 now, and I'm sitting somewhere considerably different while I tell you this, but we'll get there. Chuck and I ran machines together for 19 years at a tool and die shop off Broadway Road in Tempe. He was a lousy machinist, if I'm being honest about him, and I intend to be. Fast hands, no patience. I recut more of his work than he ever knew about, but he was the kind of fella who'd notice you'd gone quiet and actually ask about it, which in a building full of men is rarer than you'd think. He'd moved to Bangkok, married a Thai woman named Pim he'd met through her cousin, who'd worked at a dry cleaner in Chandler, of all the ways a life can turn. And he'd taken to calling me every few weeks, always at the wrong hour. $4, he says. Coffee, a plate of chicken and rice, and a bus ride I didn't even need to take. And I said, "Well, that's swell, Chuck," and looked out my kitchen window at my driveway. Now, let me back up and lay the piece out square before I start cutting on it. My name's Dwayne Lindquist, born in Muskegon, Michigan. Came out to Arizona in '89 because my lungs were bad and the doctor said dry air, and because a shop in Tempe would pay me $2 an hour more than anybody in Michigan would. My wife Bernice came with me and cried for about a year and then never wanted to go back. We bought the house on Alta Mesa in '94. 3 bedrooms, block construction, a carport, a gravel yard because Bernice said she'd be damned if she'd water grass in a desert, nothing anybody would photograph. But I put my hands on every inch of that house over 30 years. I hung the ceiling fans. I replumbed the guest bath twice, badly the first time. I built the workbench in the carport out of a door and some 4x4s, and it was the truest surface in the county, and I mean that literally. I checked it with a level I trusted. Here's the thing about a tool and die man. You spend 40-some years working to 1,000th of an inch, which is about 1/3 the thickness of a hair. You learn that a good finish will never save a bad setup. You get in the habit of measuring things before you have an opinion about them, which is my long way of saying I am not a man who leaps. Bernice died in 2019. I was 63. Her pancreas, and it was fast, which people tell you is a mercy, and I suppose from her side of it, it was. From my side, it was like somebody shut the main breaker off. One day, the house had a person in it, and then it had me. I kept working, 3 more years, until I was 66, and I was the old man teaching kids to run a machine that ran itself. Then I retired, and that's when it got bad. Not dramatic bad. Nobody came to the door. The days just got very flat. I'd get up at 5 out of habit, because that's when I got up for 40 years, and then I'd have all of it, all of the day, in front of me. My whole routine took about 11 seconds to describe. Coffee, the Republic, Walmart on Tuesdays, rake the gravel, which is a joke. There's nothing out there to rake. Every so often my daughter Colleen would call from Boise and I'd tell her I was fine, and she'd say good, and we'd both hang up, feeling like we'd done a chore. And the money. I want to be straight about the money because that's what people actually want to know. I wasn't broke. I want to say that plain. I had Social Security, about $2,080 a month, and a pension out of the shop. $820 on top of that. $2,900 a month, gross. That's not poverty. In a lot of the country, that's fine. It was just that in Mesa, in 2023, it bought me exactly the life I've described and not one thing more. Property tax went up. The homeowner's insurance went up more than that. Air conditioning from May to October in a blockhouse is not optional, it's medical. My electric bill in July was more than my first car payment ever was. Every dollar of that $2,900 had a job before it hit the account. So I had a paid-off house I couldn't afford to leave and couldn't afford to live in comfortably, which is a sentence that took me a long while to be willing to say out loud. And Chuck kept calling. He'd tell me about a park where old men played badminton at 6 in the morning, about a woman on his corner who made chicken and rice and knew what he wanted before he sat down. He'd say, "Nobody here thinks I'm finished." That one landed. That one I carried around for about 3 days. I want to be fair to Chuck, though, because he was also selling. He always was. But you can know a man's exaggerating and still hear the true part underneath it. The true part was that he sounded like himself again. He hadn't sounded like himself since about 2006. So one night in October, sitting at Bernice's kitchen table with the coffee I still make 2 cups of by mistake, I got out a legal pad, which is what I do instead of dreaming. And at the top of it I wrote, in the block capitals I've used since trade school, one word: measure. Then I underlined it and sat there a while, and then went and got my reading glasses and started writing down what a plane ticket cost. I spent about 5 months on that legal pad before I bought anything but a ticket. That's the machinist in me. You don't chuck a part in the vise and start hogging metal off. You figure out where zero is first. So I read government pages, expat forums, a couple of long, boring articles by people who'd actually done it and weren't trying to sell me a condo. And the first thing I found out was that Chuck was full of it. Not lying. Just quoting his best day as if it were his whole month. Because when I finally pinned down what a decent, comfortable single-man life actually costs in Bangkok, the honest number people kept landing on was somewhere between $2,100 and $3,100 a month, not $4 a day, not $500 a month either, which is a figure you'll see thrown around by people who have never paid a Thai electric bill in April. I called Chuck about it, 6 in the morning his time, which I did on purpose. Chuck, what's your rent? Long pause. Well, Pim's got the... What's your rent, Chuck? He told me. And then he told me his electric and his insurance and what he actually spends, and it came out to something a whole lot closer to my number than his. And he laughed and said, yeah, all right, but it's a better life for the money, Dwayne. That's the part I'm not exaggerating. And that I could work with. That's a claim you can check. So I went. 17 days, November of 2023. 67 years old, first passport of my life, stamped exactly once. Now, nobody tells you about the door. You come off that airplane at Suvarnabhumi after 22 hours, and the jet bridge is air-conditioned and fine. And then past the baggage claim, there's a set of automatic doors out to the taxi rank, and when they open, the outside comes in at you like somebody opened an oven you didn't know was in the room. Arizona heat is a hair dryer. This was a warm, wet towel over your face, and it did not come off for 17 days. Chuck was at the curb in a shirt with parrots on it, grinning like a fool. He'd booked me a room off Silam Road, down in Bang Rak, the older part of central Bangkok, near the river, not the shiny part. Shop houses with laundry off the balconies, tangles of black wire overhead you'd swear were held up by Faith, a tailor, a coffin maker, and about 9 places selling chicken and rice. The first morning he had me up at 5:30. Where in the world are we going? It's dark. Lumpini, he says. Trust me. Lumpini Park is a big green rectangle in the middle of the city, and at 6 in the morning it is the least lonely place I have ever stood. Hundreds of them. Old Thai men and women walking the loop in 2s and 3s. A whole crowd doing slow exercises in a line. Another bunch doing aerobics to music out of a speaker on a cart, people my age and older, kicking their legs up. Badminton on the footpaths with no net, just 2 fellas and a shuttlecock and a great deal of opinion. And enormous lizards in the ponds, 4 and 5 feet long, and nobody looks at them twice. Chuck says, there's your gym membership. I stood there and watched an old man in a straw hat lap me twice, and I felt something I hadn't felt in about 4 years, which was competitive. The rest of the 17 days I measured. That's not a figure of speech. I had the pad. I walked into buildings and asked what a 1-bedroom went for. I stood in the Bang Rak market with a little conversion written on my hand, 33 baht to the dollar, and priced eggs and rice and chicken and a mango like I was doing a time study. I rode the SkyTrain from Saladayang to see what it cost. I took a motorbike taxi one time, exactly one time, with an orange vest fella who drove like the road was on fire, and I wrote down the fare and wrote next to it, no. I went into a hospital too. Walked into B&H on Convent Road and told a young woman at the desk I wasn't sick. I just wanted to know what things cost. She didn't think that was strange at all. Printed me a sheet. A routine doctor's visit ran around 1,300 baht, about $40. I stood in that lobby looking at the sheet a long while, thinking about a bill I got in Arizona in 2021 for a 15-minute conversation. Now, I want to be square about the hard parts, because you'll hear plenty of people leave them out. I could not talk to anybody. That's the truth. In the hotel, in the hospital, at the SkyTrain window, English was fine. 2 streets over, it was gone. Thai is a tonal language, meaning the same syllable means 5 different things depending on how your voice goes, and I have a flat Michigan voice that goes exactly nowhere. I tried to say thank you for 4 days and got nothing but polite confusion. On the 5th day, a woman selling fruit corrected me, twice, patiently, and the 3rd time I said it, she clapped her hands once and laughed at me. I about floated home. Last Sunday, I went to a temple on Rama, the 4th road, Wat Hua Lam Phong. Took my shoes off, sat on the cool tile at the back, didn't pray because I don't, particularly, just sat. Monks in orange going about their business, somebody's grandmother lighting incense, a dog asleep in a doorway, dead to the world. And I thought, I have not been bored in 17 days. I flew back to Mesa, opened the front door on the 2nd of December and set my bag down in the hallway. And the house was quiet in a way it had never been quiet before, because now I knew there was a version of a Wednesday that wasn't this one. I stood in that hallway a good long time, then I went and got the pad. I ran the 2 columns side by side for most of that winter. Left side Mesa, right side Bangkok. Same categories, same handwriting, checked the way I'd check a print twice, then once more the next morning when I wasn't in love with my own arithmetic. And the Mesa column kept coming out the same, $2,900 a month coming in, and a life that fit inside it like a foot in a shoe, half a size small. Never comfortable, and no room to ever get comfortable, because every year the tax and the insurance and the electric went up, and the $2,900 went up by about enough to buy a sandwich. And here's the part I had to sit with. Everything I had in this world was inside the walls of that house. I couldn't eat it. I couldn't spend it. I could sit in it in July at 114 degrees and pay to keep it cool. That's a machine that's running but not cutting anything. I called Colleen in February. I'd rehearsed it, which she could tell. You're going to do what? I'm going to sell the house and I'm going to move to Thailand. There was a silence on that line about 11 seconds long. I counted, because that's what I do. Dad, that's Mom's house. And I said, and I've thought about this 100 times since, whether it was the right thing to say, I said, honey, your mother's not in the house. She cried some, then she got mad, which is fair, and she asked me a lot of good hard questions I mostly had answers for because of that legal pad, and one I didn't, which was what happens when you're 80 and something goes wrong. I told her the truth that I didn't know yet, but I'd rather figure that out from a place I wanted to be. We hung up, not settled. That took a while longer. The realtor was a woman named Denise Ruiz, and she was good, and she told me straight what the place would bring. Block house, 94 build, original kitchen, gravel yard, decent street. She was kind about the guest bath. It listed in March of 2024. I was 68. It sold in 19 days for $342,000. Now I know what some of you just did in your head because I'd have done it too. $342,000 he's set. No, because in 2009, when the shop went to 4 days a week and Bernice's hours got cut at the school district and the whole state of Arizona was on fire financially, we refinanced. Took money out to keep the lights on and to keep making payments, which is what people did, and I'm not ashamed of it. Kept the house. But it reset the clock, and 15 years later I still owed $168,000 on a house I'd bought for a fraction of that. So, $342,000 less the $168,000 I owed, less the agent, the closing, the title, the new water heater the inspection insisted on, and the roof patch it insisted on harder. Call all of that $26,000, because that's about what it was. I walked away with $148,000. $148,000 for 30 years in a house. Write that on a pad and look at it a while. That was every bit of what I had. I want you to hold on to that number, because it becomes important later on in a way I did not see coming. The hardest part wasn't the house, though, it was the carport. 42 years of a man's tools are in a carport, A Bridgeport mill I bought used in '96 and rebuilt the head on myself. A granite surface plate that weighed as much as a person. A set of gauge blocks in a felt-lined case that I did not let anybody else touch, ever, and I mean including Chuck, especially Chuck. Micrometers. A tap and die set I'd been adding to since I was 20. You can't ship that. You can't store it, not for what storage costs. So you sell it. Fella came out on a Saturday for the mill. 30 maybe. Trailer, a friend, not enough straps. Starting a little shop out of his garage doing motorcycle parts, and he walked around that machine the way you walk around a horse you're thinking about buying. He said, "Does it still hold a tenth?" And I said, "It'll hold a tenth if you know what you're doing. It'll hold a 64th if you don't." He laughed. Then, "Would you show me?" So we spent 2 hours in the Arizona heat with him, running that mill and me at his shoulder, saying climb versus conventional, take a spring pass, back the table off, and come at it again. When they winched it onto the trailer, I went inside and stood in the kitchen a minute where nobody could see me. I gave him the gauge blocks. Wouldn't take money. Told him don't put bare fingers on them and don't ever let them sit dirty. And he nodded like he understood. And maybe he will in about 10 years. Last night in the house, I slept on the floor of the front room on a camping pad. Block houses are loud when they're empty. The air conditioner cycled and the whole place echoed, and I lay there and did the thing where you look at a ceiling and think about a woman who's been gone 5 years. I said out loud, "Well, Bernie, here we go." That's the only time in this whole business I ever felt like a crazy person. Denise handed me the check and I drove to Sky Harbor with 2 suitcases and got on an airplane on the 11th of June, 2024. One way, 68 years old. And I want to tell you I felt brave. I didn't. Somewhere over the Pacific, about hour 14, in the dark, with everybody asleep around me, it landed on me all at once that there was now no house. There was no address on earth that was mine. Just a number in a bank and a man in seat 41C. I gave myself 60 days in a rented room before I'd sign anything. That was the rule I wrote on the pad on the airplane. Don't fall in love with the first part off the machine. 11 apartments. Chuck came to 4 of them and then got bored, which is Chuck. The shiny ones on Sathorn were beautiful, and I didn't want them glass boxes with a gym I wouldn't use 40,000 baht a month to look at the skyline. What I took was the 8th floor of an older building on a soi off Silom, back toward Bang Rak, 1990s construction, real walls, a balcony wide enough for 1 chair and a drying rack, a kitchen that's more of a suggestion, which is fine, because in that neighborhood a man cooking his own dinner every night is being stubborn on purpose. 26,000 baht a month, just under $800. 2 months deposit and the first month up front, which stung, but I'd planned for it. The lady who owns the building is named Kuna Nong, and she runs that place like a shop foreman. All right, the numbers. Here's the whole thing, and you can check every line of it. Coming in, Social Security, 2,080. Shop pension, 820. 2,900 a month, gross. Now, I'm on Medicare. I turned 65 back in 2021, so of course I am. And here's a fact that catches people out, so listen close. Medicare does not cover you in Thailand. Not 1 baht of it. It stops at the water. I kept paying for Part B anyway. $202.90 a month this year. People ask why, if it doesn't cover me here. 2 reasons. It covers me when I go back to the States, and I do go back. And if you drop it and want it later, they charge you a permanent penalty for every year you were out. Keeping it was the cheaper mistake. So take that off the top, and what actually lands in my account is $2,697 a month. Going out, here in Bangkok, rent, 26,000 baht. Electric, water, and running the air conditioning like a man who means it, 3,600. Food market, cooking, and eating out most days. Because eating out here is not a luxury, 18,500. Getting around, the Sky Train and the Underground and a grab car when it's raining, 3,400. Phone and internet, 1,300. Health insurance, my medicines, and going to the doctor when I ought to, 10,800 baht. The insurance alone is about $8,000 of that, a shade under $3,000 a year, and it climbs every birthday, and past 75 it gets harder to buy at all. That is the real cost of doing this at my age, and anybody who leaves it off their list is fooling you. And everything else, clothes, haircuts, a beer, visa fees, a wedding gift, a little in the box at the temple, $9,000. Total, 72,600 baht. At 33 baht to the dollar, that's $2,200 a month. 2,697 coming in, 2,200 going out. That leaves me about $497 a month. Now that is not a fortune, and I want to be careful here because there's people online who'll tell you you can do this on $500 a month, and that is a flat lie that will get somebody hurt. This is a comfortable, insured, air-conditioned, eat-what-you-want life in a big, expensive capital city, and it costs what it costs. But $497 a month of daylight at 68, when in Mesa I had nothing. I'd never had a surplus in my life, not 1 month in 50 years of working. The first time I looked at that figure, I had to go sit on the balcony. Then there was the visa, which is its own education. You'd think a man my age would use the retirement visa you get from home, the OA. But that one makes you carry approved health insurance, and how much and what kind depends on who you ask and which consulate you're standing in front of. I got 3 different answers from 3 sources. So I did what most people over 60 do. Fly in on a tourist entry, then convert it inside the country to a non-O. Same money test either road. You show 800,000 baht sitting in a Thai bank, about $24,000, and it has to have been sitting there a couple months before you apply, and it has to have come from abroad. Or you show 65,000 baht a month coming in, about $1,970, which my $2,900 would cover. I used the deposit because I had the house money and it was less paperwork. That money isn't spent, it sits, but it has to genuinely sit, and you build it back up before you renew. Immigration morning, I was there at 5:30 with a folder. Passport copies, bank book, bank letter, photos. A map of my building. I had to draw myself, a man who's read blueprints for 4 decades, drawing a map like a 3rd grader. Then you take a number and sit under a fan on a metal chair and wait. The Frenchman next to me had been 3 times. He said, "Bring a book, bring 2. Then the reporting starts. Every 90 days you tell them where you are. There's a form your landlord files saying you live there, a TM30, about 1,900 baht a year to renew, and a re-entry permit before you leave the country, or you throw the visa in the trash. It's not hard, it's just never finished. Bureaucracy here isn't cruel, it's patient. That first night after the stamp, I sat on my one balcony chair with a cold Leo and listened to 11 million people not go to bed, and I thought, all right, this is legal, this is paid for, this is arithmetic that works. What I didn't know yet was that arithmetic isn't the part that gets you. The first stretch was good. I want to say that because what comes next is the hard part, and I don't want you thinking it was all hard. That fall, I had a shape to a day again. Up at 5:30, down to Lumpini before the sun got serious, walked the loop twice, watched the badminton fellas argue, coffee, home before the heat, market and bang rack in the afternoon. And 2 nights a week, Chuck and I would sit on plastic stools somewhere, eating grilled pork on sticks, mu ping, they call it, and drink a beer, and complain about people we hadn't seen in 6 years. Then in February, Pim's mother had a stroke. She's from Nakhon Sawan, about 3 hours north. Big family, and Pim's the one who takes care of things, which is how it works here. They went up for 2 weeks, and then it was a month, and then Chuck called and said they were staying. He felt terrible about it. I told him not to, and I meant it, because what was he supposed to do? That's his wife's mother. But I hung up and stood in my kitchen, that's more of a suggestion, and did the arithmetic I did not want to do. I have moved to a city of 11 million people to be near exactly one of them, and he has just left. And then the hot season came. Now everybody tells you Thailand is hot. You think you know. In March and April, in the middle of Bangkok, it is a different animal. It doesn't cool off at night. The concrete holds it and gives it back to you at 11 in the evening. And that's the same season they burn the fields up country, and it blows down over the city. And for weeks the air goes the color of dishwater, and the buildings a mile off look like a pencil drawing somebody smudged. You can taste it. My throat was raw for a month. I stopped going to Lumpini in the mornings. Just for a while I told myself, that was the mistake if you want to know where it started, not the heat, stopping. Because here's what I learned about Bangkok that spring. This city will let you disappear. It is not hostile, nobody's rude to you, ever. But it will let you go a very long time without one person requiring anything of you. And if you're a widower who worked alone at a machine for 40 years and never was much of a joiner, that's a comfortable coffin to lie down in. The language didn't help. I had my greetings, my numbers, my thank yous. That's enough to buy a mango. It is not enough to say anything. And there's a particular flavor of lonesome where you're surrounded by warm, friendly people all day and cannot get past the third sentence with any of them, and after a while you stop starting. Then Songkran came. Mid-April, Thai New Year, and it is a nationwide water fight, and Siloam Road, my road, is one of the biggest ones in the country. They close it. Thousands of people, water guns, buckets, hoses off the back of trucks, everybody soaked and hollering, and the older folks doing the gentle version, pouring a little scented water over your hands to bless you. I watched it from my balcony, 8 floors up, cold beer, big smile on my face. And I did not go down. I stood up there and told myself it was the crowds and the noise and that I'd get wet, and I'm 69 years old. And every word of that was a lie, and I knew it while I was saying it. I was scared to go down there. That's the truth of it. I didn't know how to be in it. I'd have had to be a person walking into something, and I had gotten out of practice at being a person. Colleen called 2 days later. Everything fine, everybody's busy, the dog had surgery. She asked how I was, and I said good. Real good. Told her about the water festival like I'd been in it. After I hung up, I figured out I had not had a conversation longer than 4 sentences with another human being in 9 days. 9 days. I'd talked to Kuna Nong about a leak. I'd said thank you maybe 200 times. And that night it was a Tuesday, and it was about 3 in the morning, and I couldn't sleep because the air conditioner was working too hard and the room smelled like smoke from 100 miles away. I picked up my phone, and I typed in my own address, Alta Mesa. I typed it in like a man calling an old girlfriend at 3 in the morning, which is what it was. It came up. Somebody had flipped it, painted the block gray, which looked ridiculous, pulled the gravel and put in that fake turf. New kitchen, the kind that's all white and has no soul in it. The guest bath I plumbed twice was gone entirely, moved a wall, and I sat there in the dark on the other side of the world going, that's a bearing wall, you idiots, and then stopping, because it plainly wasn't. And I'd have known that if I still lived there. 22 photographs. I went through every one of them twice. In the 7th one you could see the carport, empty, swept. The bench I built out of a door was gone. And the listing said, for sale, $415,000. I sat up the rest of that night, watched the sky go gray and then orange over Bangkok with the phone face down on my chest. And at about 5:30 in the morning I picked it up again and found Denise Ruiz's number, still sitting in my contacts from 2024, and I saved it to the front screen. I want to be careful how I say this next part. I've heard people tell this kind of story like it was a mistake they're ashamed of. It wasn't. It was the most honest thing I did that whole year. I wanted my house back, badly enough to find out if I could have it. I sat on it 2 days. Not out of wisdom, the time difference, and cowardice, about equal parts. Then on a Thursday evening, 8 o'clock my time, 6 in the morning hers, I called Denise Ruiz. She picked up on the 4th ring and remembered me before I'd finished saying my name. Dwayne Lindquist. Well, where in the world are you calling from? Bangkok. Bangkok. A pause. How is it? And I said, it's hot, and left the rest. Then I told her, the house is listed. I saw it, and I want to know what it would take. She didn't laugh and she didn't get excited. She got quiet a second, then professional, which is what I needed. All right, she says, let's look at it honestly. Have you got a pen? I had a pen. I had the back of a Thai electric bill, because that's what was on the table. She walked me through it. The place had been flipped and it was listed at $415,000. She said it'd probably move at $410, $412. Arizona was still Arizona. I said, all right, I've got $148,000 less what the move cost me, so call it $141,000. Cash, down. Then you're financing $274,000, she says. At today's rates, 30 years, that's payment and interest somewhere around $1,786 a month. Then property tax and homeowners on top. Call that another $360. So you're looking at about $2,146 a month before you turn a light on. I have $2,697 coming in, which leaves $551 a month for a man to eat, run a car, pay an electric bill in an Arizona July, and buy his own medicine. I've spent my whole life around numbers that either work or they don't, and I've always found that restful. But I sat there and ran it again, hoping it came out different. Then Denise said the other thing, the part they don't teach realtors. Dwayne, no lender's writing that loan. Not on $2,900 a month gross with a $2,100 payment. Not at 69. They're not allowed to hold your age against you, but they are allowed to hold that ratio against you, and they will. I know it. You'd have to buy it cash, and you can't. I know it. And then she was quiet a beat, and she said, "Can I ask you something as somebody who's sold a lot of houses to people who were sad?" "Go ahead." "What would you do in it?" And I did not have an answer for that. I sat there in Bangkok with the fan going and tried to picture it. Me in the gray house with the fake grass and the soulless kitchen. No bench in the carport, no Bernice, no Mill, no Chuck, no reason to get up at 5:30. Paying $2,100 a month for the privilege of being lonesome in a familiar room. And I understood not all at once. It took a couple more days, honestly, but it started right there. I hadn't been trying to buy a house. I'd been trying to buy back 1994. And they don't sell that. Nobody does. Not for $415,000, not for $4 million. I told her I'd think about it. She said, "Dwayne, I don't think you should," and then, "Take care of yourself." And I believe she meant it. I hung up and sat in that chair until the sky went gray. Then, because I'd been up all night anyway, and there was nothing else to do with myself, I put on my shoes and walked out onto the soy at about 5:30 in the morning. Auntie Toy's cart was already open. She does chicken and rice cowman guy, and she'd fed me 2-3 times a week from about my second month, and then I'd more or less stopped coming during the smoke and the heat and the disappearing. She looked up, looked at me a second longer than a person usually does. And she didn't say a thing. She reached under her cart and pulled out a plastic stool, the little red one, and set it down, pointed at it, pointed at me, went back to her chicken. That's all. That's the whole event. I sat on the stool and she put a plate in front of me I hadn't ordered, and a bowl of that broth, and I ate it, and my eyes ran. And I'd like to tell you it was the chili, but there wasn't any chili in it. While I was sitting there, Nguyen came over. One of the orange vest motorbike fellas at the mouth of the soy. His English is about 11 words and my Thai's about the same, so between us we've got 22. He looked me over. "Papa, long time. You sick?" "No, not sick." And he nodded like that was a complete and satisfactory answer, said okay, slapped my shoulder twice and went back to his bike. Papa. He'd been calling me that for a year, and I'd never once thought about what it meant. Here's what I want you to understand about this country, because I had it wrong. I'd been waiting for somebody to invite me to come get me. Thai warmth doesn't work that way. There's a thing they call krengjai, roughly a horror of imposing on you, and it means nobody is going to come knocking on a lonely man's door. They will, however, notice, and they will keep a stool for you. If you show up enough times, that stool becomes yours. Regularity is the price of admission. Nobody told me. It's just true. So I started paying it. Back to Lumpini the next morning and every morning after. Stood near the badminton fellas long enough that one of them finally handed me a racket, and I was terrible, and they thought that was the funniest thing all week. Signed up for Thai lessons near Saladayang 2 mornings a week, and I'm still bad, but I can now be bad in complete sentences. And I met a Dutchman named Wim at the Bangkok market arguing with a woman about ginger. So here's a Tuesday. This past one, actually. Up at 5:30, because 40 years is 40 years. Down the elevator, past Kunanong sweeping the lobby, and she says something in Thai that's too fast, and I say the thing that means again, slowly, "Please," and she says it again slowly, and it turns out the water's off on 6. 2 years ago, that whole exchange would have been a shrug. It is not a small thing. Walk to Lumpini. 2 laps. badminton with the fellas from about 6:15, and I've gotten to where I'm only the second worst. Then coffee with Wim, who is the most opinionated man in Southeast Asia, and we argue about the Dutch football team, which I know nothing about, which does not slow either of us down. Home before the sun means it. Afternoon, the market in Bangkok. Evening, chicken and rice at Auntie Toy's on my stool, and she has never once in a year and a half asked me what I want. That's the whole day, and I'd trade about nothing for it. Colleen came in February, 10 days. I was nervous as a cat. I kept thinking she'd walk into my little 8th floor apartment and see a sad old man in a rented room a long way from his family. Second night, I took her to Ortor Khor, the big fresh market up past Chatuchak, and she stood in front of a table of about 40 kinds of mango, absolutely stunned. The woman running it started handing her slices to try, and Colleen looked over at me, and I said the Thai for "she's my daughter," which I had practiced for about a week, and the whole row of them made a noise like I'd announced a wedding. She was quiet in the taxi home. Then, "You have a life here." And I said, "I do." "I didn't think you did." And then she cried a little, and so did I, some. And then we got sandwiches from the 7-Eleven downstairs at 11 at night like a couple of teenagers. She still wishes I were closer. I still wish I were closer. Both are true at the same time, and neither one cancels the other, and that's just the freight on this. Now the honest parts, because I said I'd give them to you. Last October my gallbladder went, hurt like blazes, and I went into Bumrungrad at 2 in the morning in a grab with Wim in the back seat telling me to breathe. They took it out the next day. The bill came to about 190,000 baht, call it $5,800. My insurance took most of it, and I paid about 30,000 baht out of pocket. Roughly $900 out of the house money. Medicare paid exactly nothing, because Medicare does not cross the ocean, not 1 baht. I want that said plain, because it's the fact that trips people up more than any other. And the care was as good as anything I ever got in Arizona, and I was out in 2 days, and a nurse held my hand while they put the line in. But look what that means. I've got a surplus of about $497 a month and what's left of a house in the bank, and 1 gallbladder took a piece of it. My premium climbs every year, and past 75 it gets hard to buy at all. I plan around it. Anybody who tells you they've got that part solved is either rich or lying. Other honest ones. I will never be Thai. I'm a Farang, not an insult. Just a fact, and there's a last room in this culture I'll never be let all the way into, and I've made my peace with it. I can't own land here, foreigners can't. If the exchange rate slides 10%, my budget slides 10%, and I feel it. And Bernice is buried in Mesa, Arizona, 8,000 miles from where I sleep, and I think about that more than I let on. Chuck's still up in Nakhon Sawan. I go 3-4 times a year. He's fat and happy and still a lousy machinist. The house sold in the fall. I looked it up one night and it said sold, and I waited to feel something and mostly didn't. Some families in there. I hope they use the carport. I'll tell you what I figured out, and it took me 69 years and 1 long-distance phone call to a realtor. I thought a house was where your life was kept, like a box, like if I could get the box back, I'd get the contents back too. That's not what a house is. Bernice wasn't in that house. 1994 wasn't in that house. What was in that house was a man raking gravel and waiting. What I've got now is 800 square feet I don't own, on the 8th floor of a building I don't own, in a country that will never quite be mine. And there's a woman who keeps a red stool for me, and a fella who calls me Papa, and 11 men who expect me at a badminton court at 6:15, and if I don't show up, somebody notices. That's a home. Turns out it never was about the deed. I'm 70. I sold my house and I tried to buy it back, and I'm glad, genuinely, on a Tuesday, glad that I couldn't. Before I let you go, one last thing. If you've got that same itch I had, sitting at a kitchen table wondering whether the numbers could ever work for somebody like you, there's a free tool down in the description. The Honest Thailand Retirement Starter Kit, it's called. I didn't make it and I'm not selling you a thing. It's a straight self-check, every bit as willing to talk you out of this as into it, and a worksheet where you run your own real numbers, city by city, the way I ran mine on that legal pad. Costs you nothing, and if it tells you to stay right where you are, That's an honest answer, too. That's all I've got. Take care of yourself.